Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Envelop Podcast. I'm your host, Eugene Crypto MC. We are continuing to explore what's going on in Web3 space by talking with Web3 professionals. And today is going to be a very insightful episode for you because I'm having Ivan Tan. He's an entrepreneur who's highly passionate about Web3, NFTs, encrypted and blockchain. He's formerly a portfolio manager at London and Capital. And now he's co-founder at Sgnal without I, and Sgnal is a platform which is providing sentiment-focused insights into NFT communities and ecosystems, enabling businesses to make confident and informed decisions for Web3. It is powered by artificial intelligence and backed by Outlier Ventures. So greetings for Burke. I'm a personal fan of him. So if you have a lack of insights today, you will have it. We are promising you today. So Ivan, it's great to have you on our podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for having me on, Eugene.
Let's start with your story. You are a former portfolio manager, then you have become an entrepreneur. You have created two businesses. Tell us, how did you get into Web3 space? What have you already done? We are listening.
Yeah, most certainly. I think, I've been an entrepreneur all my life, whereas sort of finance, the one job I've had was in finance, but and a bit of a lockdown reflection sort of made me jump back into entrepreneurial. But how I really jumped into the Web3 space was back in 2017 when Bitcoin first hit $20,000. I think that's when the initial excitement really got on board. And that's where I started learning and reading more about this space. So I got really involved with the ICO boom, which happened after. And I'm sure we're all guilty of this, where we know the 3 or 4 letter acronym of a token, but we don't actually know the full name or the full use case of it too. And I'm sure we're all guilty of that. So I was quite active within sort of trying to trade so a lot of the different ICOs and altcoins within that. And then as we sort of approached sort of 2020, when NFTs really first started coming about, that's when I had a real strong affinity with the first generation of NFTs were very much art focused. It was almost looked at an alternative medium of art. Remember when we had the Beeple selling at auction for a silly number of $60 million? That's one where I had a real affinity because in my background too, my very first business, I was an art dealer, or I ran an art investment business, to be clearer. So from the more creative side of things, I really understood how NFTs worked in terms of, it was like the life cycle of an artwork and an artist compressed together. So what takes 5 years in the traditional art market can happen in 5 days, 5 minutes, 5 seconds within the within the NFT space, which was the area which sort of really drew me in initially. And as so we went through the emotions of 2020 and 2021, between sort of lockdown and sort of the Web3 space really kicking off. Well, it wasn't really called the Web3 space until the end of last year. That's when I got really super excited into NFTs in terms of, what the potential is from the technology and, the future use cases, which is what really excites me within the space.
Well, my story is quite similar on you. I did join the space in 2017. I do remember well such an ICO boom. And let's remind again that the first NFT came right on the same time. There were CryptoKitties in December of 2017. So by the price of Bitcoin, we're almost in the December of 2017, 19, then 2020. This is how the world works. Okay, so you're very passionate. I'm feeling you, okay? You're very passionate in Web3. What excites you most in Web3? Technology, people, future, disruption, what?
Yeah, I think it's really sort of comes down to sort of what the core values are of the Web3 space, in terms of sort of decentralization, immutability, and trust. I think what really excites me is the sort of future use cases of this. Partly, firstly, on the decentralization area, it's about how, that ability of sort of being able to sort of better own your data, better sort of manage and control your data, sort of not having the large corporates or large centralized arenas, i.e. your Googles, your Facebooks and whatnot, having this sort of centralized point of contact. So I think that decentralization, super exciting, but it's also thinking about sort of the immutability, about how the traceability of the blockchain, which creates a huge layer of trust in terms of, everything you do theoretically can be traced on the blockchain theoretically. And it's that exciting potential, because I think it's one where it helps track records, like medical records, I think would be hugely beneficial in terms of just consolidating all into one space. And also having, assets which are sort of just purely belongs to you. So outside of NFTs, I'm really interested in like soul tokens, for example, because, I think, having sort of things which are sort of tied to you personally, and it's only for you, super exciting. But then also just the wider use cases, whether we go down sort of ticketing, tokenizing different things, carbon credits, music, so on and so forth. I can talk about a million use cases, but there's so much potential, which is really disrupting a lot of different industries and creating a much more exciting space for the future.
You meant soul tokens announced recently by Vitalik Buterin. And why do you love this idea? How do you think it is going to be useful? Because if it is impossible to transfer, it is possible to receive a token from somebody like how to say this motor thing. Yeah. but it's absolutely impossible to transfer for somebody. Why it is useful for you?
Yeah, I think it largely, well, if you look at the digital identity space, firstly, right, in terms of, reducing fraud, for example, whether it be your national identity card, passports, medical records, but no, even things just like, just for sort of sake of efficiency too, right? There's that no longer fear of, depending on what country you are, some countries you always have to carry your ID card with you. Just having that tied with you reduces so much inefficiencies in life. Why should I always have to carry something on me? Obviously, I think the hardest thing which hasn't really been solved yet is that sort of digital to physical bridge. So in terms of how are they actually going to know that it's tied to you when there's nothing on you? You still need a device or an entry bridge at some point to really understand it, but that's a separate topic for now. So yeah, soul tokens, things like degree certificates, for example, it just makes it a lot more straightforward, because I think from my angle, I've seen how fraud can be very easily done, especially from finance, for example, right? There was always the ability where, if you just get X sign off, you're in a certain position, you have so much power in inverted commas, but whereas this almost just reinforces the system right from the core, which is super exciting.
Absolutely. The main idea, I would say the main slogan of Sgnal is formulated quite attractive. Community insights for NFTs and Web3 powered by artificial intelligence. All the buzzwords in one sentence. Community, people, insights, right? NFT, Web3, and AI. Tell us, please, how does it work? How did you come up with this idea, and what is Sgnal?
Most certainly. And it's true. In terms of our sort of catchphrase statement, it's all about sort of capturing eyeballs within this space. But, I think if we sort of take a few steps back in terms of, firstly, how I came to find Sgnal along with my co-founder, Mike, is, it really sort of came to from a spot where, we were not necessarily NFT. I hate to use the word NFT traders, but we were active within the NFT space. And it was, realizing that the importance of, we talk about sort of community, utility, and so many different factors within the NFT space. And the reality is NFTs differentiates itself from just a standard sort of token or crypto space in terms of that there's this element of community tied to it. And the reality is community has a lot of different interpretations, but one interpretation is that community lives on Twitter and Discord. That's where it is. And so how do you tie together what happens on these off-chain platforms together with what happens on-chain, on the blockchain? So i.e., how can, how can the discussion on a Twitter thread sort of change what happens on the blockchain, i.e. from a trade perspective? So the inspiration really came about from how do we correlate the two together, essentially, which is the core idea. And I think going through the last few months of development, and especially, working together, on the with Outlier Ventures in the accelerator program, they really helped us really develop our business model. And at the core of it is that how Web3 is inherently anonymous. So how do businesses and even projects build if they don't know who their audience is, which is a bit of a classic product design conundrum in life. And sort of Web3 almost creates this conundrum where it's anonymous on one hand, but how do you build something if you don't know who you're building for, essentially? So that's where we really sort of went back to the core of product design. And in the Web2 space, there's abundance of sort of these social listening and consumer insight platforms that help inform businesses on their product, marketing, and strategic decisions. So how can we bring these platforms into the Web3 space? So yeah, that's a long-winded introduction of Sgnal, but essentially, we're helping businesses better understand the audience and community so that they're able to create a better product and have a better strategy towards creating a better overall project.
Sounds content, I love it. What we know about Sgnal core team members, its roadmap and plans till the end of 2022, and maybe are you hiring? If yes, make questions to our viewers. Maybe somebody will fill your positions.
Most certainly. So yeah, Sgnal at the moment there's a team of 5 people full time. So we've got 3 co-founders, and I'm an additional developer and community manager. And yeah, we are sort of at a scaling point and time. So we are hiring key areas, both in sort of front end development, also sort of certain back end functions and machine learning. So a lot in engineering, but at the same time too, we also have to build up the second half too, which is also from the sort of marketing and sort of business development standpoint too. So our plans for 2022, we're currently in a fundraising sprint to raise our seed round. So we're always open to talk to any investors, which I'm sure every business is at every stage in their life. And I think our key plans for sort of 2022 is to really sort of launch our live beta platform publicly by the end of this year, and also sort of start accumulating more and more businesses. So we're currently undergoing a pilot with 23 businesses and projects taking part. And yeah, it's scaling, and just keep trucking along. And I think we're actively building within this space. It's a key thing.
Let's give some credit or tribute to Outlier Ventures, I thought, because these are very known brands. And personally, the personal brand of Chairman Burke is absolutely renowned. I'm the personal fan of his podcast about Web3. How to work with them? Why should you, if you are a Web3 project that starts up, how to start work with them? Why do you need to connect with them? Is it hard to work with them? Tell whatsoever you want to say for Web3 projects, and maybe I'm looking in the side. Should we contact Outlier Ventures? Back us on that.
100%. I mean, I couldn't give more praise to the Outlier Ventures Basecamp Accelerator program. I mean, for me, through my previous businesses, I've joined a couple other accelerators and incubator programs, and Outlier Ventures by far blows it out of the water in terms of the support and sort of that core mentality of just accelerating and pushing your business towards being bigger and better. I think what we achieved in the 3 months with Outlier on the Outlier Ventures Accelerator program, was more than we can achieve just by ourselves in sort of 6 to 12 months. So from this is like a lot of support. I think especially within the Web3 space, there's a lot of different elements which we found we had to rely on external areas. So things like legal, for example, things like better understanding sort of how do you structure certain business elements, because it's almost a rewriting of a book in a lot of business startup ideas, essentially. So Outlier Ventures was a huge game changer in terms of enabling us to just move fast, simply. I think the biggest one was legal. We spent a few weeks trying to look at different law firms that knew how to do crypto law. Whereas as soon as you join OV, they've got a legal team that helps you day in, day out, but then they can supply you anything immediately. And then lastly too, it's just being part of the Outlier Ventures portfolio. I often compare it to a bit like a Harvard MBA, where if you have a Harvard MBA and then you email another Harvard MBA alumni, they have to respond. So it's that idea where being part of the portfolio, we're mixed in with a few sort of large businesses, billion-dollar protocols and projects, whether it be Blossom Protocol, DAI Data, Brave, you name it, and we get straight access to the founders, which is super, super privileged. And this is how we create sort of great synergies to create the future, the Web3 space.
Amazing. This is a great testimonial from you to Live Ventures. Show them this episode of the podcast. Okay, and let's finish with Sgnal. How to start, use Sgnal, how to join a community, or where to find a social media, how to follow and join Sgnal.
100%. So at the moment, if you want to find out more about what we're doing on Sgnal, please go to our website. So Sgnal, SGNAL.xyz. And that's where you can find out more. We're slowly opening up more positions in our pilot as we go. So if you're a business or a project, or even an agency or consulting within the Web3 space, definitely reach out through our website, and we're more than happy to see where we can help help you better understand the space and create something more exciting for the future. And in terms of social media, please reach out to our Twitter. So it's Sgnal, SGNALXYZ. That's where our DMs are always open, so you can always see our day-to-day activities, growth. We host a weekly Twitter space every Thursday at 3 p.m. British Standard Time. But apart from that, feel free to either drop us an email or DM us on Twitter, and we're always open to hear more, whether it be about Sgnal or just the Web3 space, NFT space in general.
Well, all the links are in the description of this video. You may find it there, and Sgnal is also tagged on the posts where you have found these podcasts. Let's continue to go through the NFT space. I'd love to ask you some questions. What are your main thoughts on potential of NFT as a tool? Because from my point of view, NFT is sort of a unique tool for represent anything non-fungible we may find in a physical world and digital world. This covers a huge potential, and what I'm just trying to grasp which goals it will believe. How do you see the potential of NFT as a tool, how they will be used in the future?
Yeah, I think that this is where I think we're at a super exciting rotation point now for the whole NFT concept to some degree, in terms of, we've gone from this firstly when it started sort of as art towards this sort of generative 10,000 generative projects, which was all about almost just about how do you create money. And I think that how I'm sure everyone's read 90% or 99% of projects that has been created in the last 18 months would go to zero and be worthless. Whereas the 1% would be the ones who would have true use cases and true utility. So going forward, future potential are going to be projects that are highly utility driven. It's understanding that NFTs are a tool, not the product in itself. I think a big thing I always say is that you shouldn't do tech for the sake of tech, or NFTs for the sake of NFTs. Actually understand what are you trying to do. So it's trying to understand what the future use cases are. And I think it's going back to that sort of core principles I talked about earlier about decentralization, immutability, and trust. So what use cases can you derive from that? So I see a huge amount from sort of music. I think the music industry would be sort of completely changed, can be disrupted completely by sort of how NFTs and the Web3 space works. In terms of how music studios or music record labels, take anywhere from 50 to 80% of an artist's revenue. So it's this redistribution of the revenues and also redistribution of the ownership rights towards the artist, which is super empowering. But also more simple use cases, like I think ticketing is a big one, in terms of just reducing all this sort of touting issues and sort of fake ticket issues immediately overnight. There's a few quite exciting projects, I think Token Proof being one of them, which is working on quite so, to be honest, very straightforward methods, which I think is huge use cases. And then so within the NFT space too, one of the next spaces too would be how it's going to change gaming. With the metaverse space too, I think I sort of foresee metaverse being one where each gaming studio would have their own metaverse essentially, and would allow sort of interoperability between their own games, which would be a very sort of great, effectively network to sort of keep gamers engaged towards a certain gaming studios, and sort of keep the titles sort of going for much longer in the future. And Yeah, I think that that's sort of the high levels of it. Yeah, and it's just focusing on use cases in the long run. And I think the big thing, which I also sort of foresee for the future, is that we'll just stop calling it NFTs. We'll just revert to actually what are the genuine use cases. For example, we don't when we use our sort of smartphone and whatnot, we don't say, oh, it's got a touch screen and sort of wireless connectivity or Bluetooth technology or whatever, right? We just say, oh, I need to make a call with someone. So it's just going straight to the use cases, which I see super exciting.
Garrett, I love your idea because this term, non-fungible token or fungible token, is a high-level term. It reflects the core essence, I would say, about your digital or low essence. Advocates and lawyers will understand me. We do not call such a thing like a fungible item. We call it cup or a table or a smartphone. So we need to point out utility, and you've mentioned two core things: utility and essence. This is no surprise that we've been in trouble with the utility of NFTs. We try to find what is the utility of such a JPEG, and that's why a lot of being discussed right now about the so-called smart NFT or NFT 2.0 or even dynamic NFT, and this is in particular what Envelop has been doing. I'll explain briefly and want to know your thoughts about that. So we're building the Web3 product. So imagine we take an NFT, we are adding some fungible tokens for price predictability as a collateral, right? Yeah. Then we wrap it up with some new features such as time lock, event lock, rental mechanics, royalties, and so on and so forth. So we get the same NFT technically, but with another set of features which are quite more useful than the before the set of features. And this leads to a lot of use cases in different angles, in play to earn, even in token distribution from startup to investor packed into wrapped NFT form. This is an amazing use case. So what are your main thoughts on this concept? Do you find it useful and why?
Certainly, I think the first use case, which is I think the use case that Envelop is doing the most, is a bit more from the DeFi perspective, in terms of how can investors invest in a business and then the NFT locks up their token over an investing period and whatnot. So I think that's super exciting. But I think sort of thinking more long term, right? These smart features really reward loyalty, essentially. Reward the fact that you've been in a project X time. Imagine if whatever project you own this NFT, after 6 months it unlocks additional features or it unlocks additional outputs, essentially, and it rewards just the long-term holder, which is, I think, a big thing for projects now, to avoid effectively flippers, avoid people that are just there to make a quick buck, but actually showcases who are the real long-term owners. But then then you think sort of in the greater perspective too, in terms of royalty too. We talk a lot about music, for example, right? How can this enable someone to have a time delay, whether it be again a super fan, right? Having this NFT where it suddenly unlocks a record, so 6 months down the road, but that's where the fans' loyalty is really rewarded and can be really shown to the artist and to their community too, which is a very powerful thing. So yeah, in terms of these smart NFTs, I think that they're certainly the future use cases. I mean, I've sort of seen also other businesses sort of creating other ones like an NFT that can trace their views, for example. So how many times someone has looked at an NFT. And I think this is all reinforcing and adding to the sort of previous use case discussions I had, which I think creates so much greater outputs in the future.
We both are passionate in Web3, and despite of having 13 years of Web3 de facto, starting from Bitcoin, we are still in the early stage. Everybody understands that. There are a lot of skeptics in the form of Web3. A lot of people are staying in a Web2 and they are looking skeptically. What would you say for these skeptics into Web3, for newcomers? Why Web3 matters and will matter in the future?
Most certainly. I think why it matters simply because this is where the momentum of the industry is heading. And this is also what people want in terms of decentralization and a greater sort of trust within systems, and I think the big thing is, my recommendation towards sort of especially skeptics or newcomers is to really try to detach yourself from the monetary side of the Web3, because I think people get so sucked into, how much people made on a certain crypto trade, or how Bitcoin prices sort of pulled back in the past few months. And these are all sort of very monetary things, which I think is a huge distraction from what the whole Web3 space is about, and what we're trying to achieve from a more technology and use case front. So I think the first thing is to peel yourself away from the monetary, and then try to sort of understand, what are the use cases, what is the technology getting there. And also going back to what I was saying again, don't get sucked into all these sort of acronyms. I think within the Web3 space, we're all guilty of creating sort of new words which create a bit of confusion, and whether it be hodlings or diamond hands, paper hands, and all these different words, there's stuff which all have sort of very sort of normal word alternatives, and it's trying to understand that. And I think that's where it suddenly unlocked the mind a lot clearer. And at the end of the day, it's just all about being open-minded in general, and sort of learning with things, and being able to evolve, and not be a dinosaur.
Well, yeah, go beyond the Bitcoin price and go beyond these buzzword terms, quite at the essence. We've already mentioned Outlier Ventures podcast, named Metaverse Podcast, if I'm not mistaken, like a great learning point for Web3 for newcomers. I would love to ask you about learning, because Web3 being in Web3 space requires a lot of learning on an everyday basis, and you have to elaborate your personal learning strategy. How would you suggest to learn Web3 for newcomers? How do you personally learn Web3? What's your learning strategy, for example?
Most certainly. I think the first thing I find within the Web3 space is that it's, as you said, it's continuously evolving, it's continuously changing, right? No one can be an expert on this space, because if you're an expert last week, the chances, if you've not read anything, if you're not updated yourself, you're no longer an expert today. So it's just accepting that you have to take it bite-sized, and you'll never learn everything immediately, because the space is so vast, so it's continuously evolving. In terms of how I recommend people and how to learn, it's just really just keeping an eye open. I think the reality is everyone reads some sort of news or social media every day, and it's slightly how do you tune in that social that sort of that scrolling time per se into this space, So whether if you're someone that just reads sort of the news, for example, you go to sort of BBC or CNN or whatever news website every day, maybe throw in or you can put within your search or save functions, something on Web3, and I'm sure they have a Web3 article that pops up at least, more than once a day. There's plenty of that. So bringing that onto the top of your reading list, but also slightly dipping into sort of the other sort of crypto Web3 platforms. So whether it be sort of Cointelegraph, CoinGuess, there's tons of it. I'm sure everyone can have their fun one. But then I think going back to sort of social media, I think that's such a rich and wonderful space. TikTok, Instagram has a surprising amount of Web3 news and knowledge being shared on that. But obviously you've got to take everything with a pinch of salt, but I think that's something where over time, once you do it continuously day in, day out, you'll start understanding the space and seeing what's good, what's bad. And yeah, I think it's just taking a continuous approach to sort of taking bite-sized knowledge gains, or learning bite-sized learnings every single day.
Amazing, Ivan. A lot of insights we have provided in today's episode, so we have kept our promise to our viewers. And finally, Ivan, what's the best way to follow you on the internet or to get in touch to discuss some business proposals and so on and so forth?
100%. So if you want to get in touch with me, there's really two ways. So firstly, it's going through Sgnal. So you can reach out through, as our website says, so Sgnal, SGNAL.xyz, or Twitter, SignalXYZ. But then if you want to reach out to me more personally too, you can also reach out to me on Twitter. So it's Tantrum, TANTROME, or even LinkedIn. So you can search me up on Ivan Tan. I'm always happy to sort of share more with Sgnal, or share more, or just even bounce ideas around with the Web3 NFT space in general.
Well, so all the links are in the description. It's easy to find Sgnal or Ivan on social media. And the bonus question from us, I'm wondering, don't people confuse Sgnal with the famous Signal Messenger in Web3 space, and how not to confuse that?
Most certainly. I think it's learning the XYZ part too, but I sort of noticed that I feel like Signal, there's a lot of businesses and startups with this similar name. But in terms of that, SGNAL.xyz is always the shout. And or remember my smiling face.
yeah, smiling face is great. Without I, Signal without I, Signal, we try to say that. I'm Anton, the passionate Web3 entrepreneur, the founder of Sgnal, and Eugene Crypto MC from Envelop. Already, thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the Envelop Podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and be subscribed because we deliver you a unique content. We're talking with the great professionals like you. So, stay tuned for next episode of the Envelop Podcast. Bye-bye. Blockchain. BLOCK chain. Digital money, smart contracts, NFT, IDO, decentralization, transparency. So many opportunities, but so many challenges. Some financial manipulators, by their actions, confuse blockchain solutions and block their development. The idea that the blockchain should bring copyright and royalties protection to the next level is quite old, but the realizations of these ideas are not perfect at all. There is another problem of determining the value of a particular cryptocurrency or NFT. These and other problems need to be solved. Fortunately, the blockchain infrastructure is evolving. My name is E, Mr. E, and I represent the Envelop project. Many things have already been invented in the blockchain today. Tokens, smart contracts, platforms for creating your own coins, NFTs, exchanges for buying, selling, and exchanging all these blockchain resources. Envelop is another step in the development of crypto technologies. The protocol that works with NFT and cryptocurrencies. The idea is simple but disruptive. Let's assume you have an NFT, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Using the Envelop protocol, you can wrap the original NFT accompanied with several tokens. Technically, you get a similar NFT, but what is the breakthrough here? Once wrapped, the token has a number of additional features that were not available before. The minimal cost appears. It is provided with coins wrapped together with NFT. An asset wrapped with Envelop has a number of properties that allow the original author to receive royalties from the resale of that asset. Various rules can be applied to the wrapped token. For example, a lock period for unwrapping. It secures the asset till the determined moment or safeguards it from speculation during the hype period. At the same time, wrapped tokens can be transferred and traded. These are just some of the scenarios for using Envelop. NFTs become more popular, and the tools provided by Envelop expand the opportunities of NFTs utilization. Wide application possibilities are achieved due to the fact that, in addition to the protocol, the project includes a number of subsystems. The protocol provides functions wrapping and unwrapping. Oracle Mechanics provides asset valuation using analytical algorithms. Index provides a summary assessment of several NFT assets with the common criteria. The project has its own token, which connects all elements of the system. Altogether, this is Envelop, a tool in the blockchain world for building modern and secure systems in various fields. Find more info about the project on the website. Envelop. Make your NFT valuable. Just practical, no hype.